So we're going to welcome to the stage, there we go, Paula Hunter, who's going to come and talk to us today about the Global South and open source in the Global South. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, for inviting me here today. Happy to see you all, some friendly faces out in the audience. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Global South and what we're seeing for trends with open source. My role as Executive Director of the Mojaloop Foundation is to advance the Mojaloop open source platform for financial inclusion. And so we offer instant, interoperable, real-time payments to the unbanked and underserved. And so because we're focused on financial inclusion, our focus is developing markets, Africa, Southeast Asia, South and Central America. So my notes here today are informed by our engagement with countries in those regions. So what we're seeing these days as we talk to central banks, hub operators, ministries of finance, ministries of IT, it's a whole collective of stakeholders that we need to engage to deploy these solutions, is that Linux and open source tools are well accepted and adopted in the Global South. That said, they do not understand the open source development model. They don't understand how to engage and contribute. They're very much accustomed to traditional vendor relationships with their software providers. And that comes with both positives and negatives. So it kind of harkens back to kind of the messaging I was delivering 20 years ago in North America and Europe and elsewhere, about why open source is a viable development model, but it also requires them to think outside of the box with regard to procurement and their role in using open source projects. And the ecosystem is evolving. So, when we go to sell, if you will, Mojaloop to a central bank or to a government ministry, we're not doing it alone. First of all, we're not selling anything. Mojaloop Foundation is a nonprofit. But what we need is partners in the local market, systems integrators, solution providers, et cetera, to engage with us to deploy the solutions to those entities. And again, this is very much evolving. People are not used to this new model of there's no software vendor in the mix for this deployment. That said, the reason why open source is so well suited to these types of projects, particularly large-scale infrastructure projects, is that the countries can maintain digital and data sovereignty. We hear a lot about data sovereignty. I want to own my data. I want to know, I want to control it. But digital sovereignty is equally important. Many of these countries have been loaned big buckets of cash by the World Bank to do infrastructure deployments. But the people that are doing the deployments are proprietary software vendors. And they control the rollout of the infrastructure. They control the digital platform. In many cases, they are not giving the central bank any access to the underlying software and solution. And that's something that they want, the banks and the ministries want to change. They want not only control over the data, but the infrastructure as well. And what that means is that cloud deployments are not in vogue, particularly in Africa. Most of the countries that we talk to, we'll do a proof of concept on the cloud, we'll do a pilot project on the cloud, but when we go full-scale implementation, we want it on-prem. So for my developers that are around the world, we're developing on AWS, on Google Cloud, on Azure. We have to have a whole work stream that ensures that our solution can be deployed on-prem. So that does not, I don't see that changing anytime soon. Once they get more accustomed to cloud-based deployments and more trusting, they may shift over time. That's not a hill I want to die on. I'll let them make up their mind when they're ready. But also, the onus is on the cloud providers to get more data centers across the continent and across the regions. If the country doesn't have a data center, if AWS doesn't have a data center in their country, they're not interested. It's just, from their perspective, too risky. There's also a whole dynamic of all the big funders. I mentioned the World Bank, but there's many others. There's USAID, at least there was up until recently. There's, Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, World Bank, many different actors in this space that are advocating for large-scale infrastructure projects and very much a fan of open source. But some of these players have not adopted the procurement thinking for these projects. So World Bank has a very elaborate and complex way for a solution provider to bid on an infrastructure project. It totally does not comprehend open source procurement. We have a lot of work to do to get the people that are providing the funding, whether via loans or via grants, to understand not only how the entity can procure the solution, which does not include a software license, but how they can get the services to maintain and operate the platform. And more importantly, if we see a deployment going live and that country is actively involved in our open source community, we want there to be terms in the contracts that ensure that the systems integrators contribute code back to the open source project. If Gates Foundation is funding XYZ service provider to deploy Mojaloop, and they need to make some changes to Mojaloop for the needs of that particular country, we want those code changes back to Mojaloop. Because the Gates Foundation, if they're funding the deployment, we want them to ensure, to dictate in the contract terms, that contributions come back to the core project. Better for everyone. So the other thing that has become a really trending topic is the whole concept of digital public goods, digital public infrastructure. There is a market basket of acronyms of entities, DPGA, CDPI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're jumping on the bandwagon of digital public goods, which is great, but there's a lot of noise and chatter on how open source fits with digital public goods, how all these various organizations can help advance our mission and ensure progress. So some of the places where we're seeing traction include markets like Rwanda, can't even see my slides here, Rwanda, the Philippines, where else? Uganda, Zambia, Liberia, Togo, Tanzania, thank you. Showing my age or I can't read my slides. These countries are embracing open source. They're participating in our work streams. They're contributing back. Strong advocates within the ecosystem, building up systems integrators that are providing services. So we're really seeing good progress there. They highly value digital and data sovereignty. On the other side of the coin, we've got up-and-coming countries that are working with us, starting to develop some projects, but they still have proprietary legacy systems in place, and so it's hard to decouple from them. Some of their funders are resistant for them investing in new designs and new deployments. They say, oh, just fix the old system. We're saying, no, add on a new open API-based system. You don't have to throw out the other stuff, but you can get more use cases, more functionality by deploying a Mojaloop-based platform. And there's still other actors that are disrupting the marketplace. Some people are trying to sell digital public goods as a service, but it gets back to the cloud issue. People are not interested in deploying cloud-based solutions right now in these developing markets. So that's it. I'm out of time by a long shot. I talk later today if you'd like to hear more about Mojaloop.
Thank you, Paula.